Okay, so this is lesson 6 for our 40S essential students in the home finance unit. Everyone who owns property needs to pay property taxes. What does that go to? Where does property taxes go? Well, I already kind of gave away one of them. The reason why this is my favorite tax is because it pays my salary. It goes towards paying, in large part, for the education system. Now, not all of education money comes from property taxes. Some of it comes from provincial taxes. The provincial government's in charge of the education system in terms of, keeping, the minister of education and stuff. That's all provincial. But in terms of the nuts and bolts of paying to keep a school running, and paying the teachers, and paying the custodial staff, and all that kind of stuff, yeah, that comes from the property taxes from the neighborhood the school's in. Okay? But that's not all. What other things do property taxes pay for? They pay for your municipal government. And I just misspelled government. 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 There we go. Okay, so is that like Justin Trudeau? Nope. That's your federal government. So is that the legislative building where the Golden Boy is? Nope. That's our provincial government. What do they mean by municipal? That means the city or the town or the village. And then if you get smaller than that, they just say, you live in a rural municipality. Anybody actually have an address where their address says RR? Right? RR, yeah, that means rural road. In other words, you don't even really live in a town. So we're not going to say your address is a town. RR. So rural municipality. So one of those 4 things is where you live. And you got to pay for the stuff that has to run these places. Municipal taxes are collected by the local municipal government. So again, that's your city government, your town, your village, your RM. And they tax residential properties, commercial properties, businesses, and farms. Now, what do all those things mean? Hopefully everybody knows what a farm is. But what is a residential property? What do they mean by the word residential? Yeah, those are homes where people live. Houses, apartment buildings, condominiums. Commercial properties. What would that mean? Offices, buildings, factories. Although businesses and commercial, that's kind of, it's almost like that shouldn't be 2 different categories. But yeah, commercial I think would mean things like stores, the mall, right? Used car lots. Anywhere where business is conducted, where you buy stuff, is generally commercial. But some businesses aren't businesses where people buy things, right? That'd be your office buildings and stuff like that. They pay property taxes. If you have a factory somewhere, yep, they got to pay property taxes. What's missing from this list? What else is there? Obviously, schools aren't on there. Kind of makes sense. I mean, that'd be like paying yourself, right? It's like, hey, we're paying our property taxes on the school to run the school. So yeah, obviously schools don't pay property taxes. What else isn't on there? What's that? Yeah, places of worship don't have to pay property taxes. Now, anybody taking the world religion class, that should be definitely a good topic of conversation. I don't get that personally. I'm not a church-going type guy, so as far as I'm concerned, when I went to church when I was a little kid with my relatives, Catholic church, they passed the plate around. They're making money. That is a business. Why are they not paying taxes like everybody else that runs a business? I don't get it. But I guess that's a debate to be had in world religions, not here. But yeah, that is correct. Churches don't pay property taxes. By the way, for those of you wondering, the largest property owner in the world is the Catholic Church. So just so you know. I can't think of anything else. Oh, this is a good one. Charities don't generally pay property taxes. Now, most charities don't own the place where they are. Like, for example, somebody asked me this morning, hey, would they pay property taxes on the Winnipeg Harvest building? For those of you who don't know, there's a couple in the city now. The big one in my neighborhood's out near Polo Park Mall, just a little bit north of it, where for the where the Costco is. It used to be like a Home Outfitters or a Cabela's or something, one of those big stores, and now it's Winnipeg Harvest. But I would be willing to bet that what's happening there is obviously Winnipeg Harvest doesn't own that building; they moved into it, and what's happening there is whoever owns the building used to have a business there, and of course it's closed. Guess what? Did they give you a break on your property taxes because you can't manage to run your business there anymore? No, you still got to pay the property taxes. I have a feeling, though, I'm going to look into this. I'll look this up. Because they're letting a charity operate there that does good things for the community, they probably get a break on the property taxes. That probably is the incentive to letting Winnipeg Harvest run their business in your building, right? So Salvation Armies, right? Places like that, places that are charitable organizations, I don't think they pay full property taxes. To be honest, even things like farms and some businesses and properties and stuff, commercial properties, they don't pay quite the level of property tax that people, like residential people, do either. Especially, different cities will actually try to say, hey, let's lower the commercial property taxes and try to lure more businesses to Winnipeg. I have it on good authority. That's why we got our IKEA before Calgary did. Like, Calgary's a lot bigger than us. But we had much lower commercial property taxes, so it was kind of more lucrative for them to come here first. Filming a bunch of movies here is because it doesn't really have much to do with property taxes, because those guys, they just rent wherever they're using. But the reason they film so many movies in Canada is because those productions are American, and of course the American dollar is worth about 25% more than our dollar. So they can pay people and buy food services and stuff to feed everybody on a movie set. They can do all those things cheaper. And let's face it, downtown Toronto looks like downtown anywhere. All big cities kind of look the same once you're downtown, unless you stand back and look at the different buildings. Right? Downtown everywhere looks kind of the same. So yeah, and we have actually kind of some neat cities here in Winnipeg, like Winnipeg and the further east you go, Quebec City, Montreal. If you go into the older parts of downtown, you can get away with making people think you're in Europe. Right? Who just came back from Europe? If you've been to Montreal or Quebec City, old Montreal, like all of the cities in Europe look like that. So yeah, so you can shoot your movie in Montreal and you didn't have to fly everybody to Europe to shoot a movie. So it's pretty sweet deal they got there. Okay, that's off topic. Back to taxes. How do we figure out how much to tax? Well, you got to make a budget.
Throw a dart at the board.
Yeah, pick a number out of a hat. No, you actually have to sit down and go, okay, what do we actually have to do to run this city or town or village or rural municipality? Well, we have to figure out how much money it takes to run everything and to pay for the day-to-day operations, as well as local improvements, general property. I think they mean general property upkeep, not taxes. Examples. Let's give some examples. What are the big things that your city, town, village have to pay out of property taxes? Anybody want to guess at some? Transit kind of pays for itself. That's why you pay bus fare. I would imagine if they're ever short, right, they run at a deficit, then yeah, property taxes probably have to cover whatever they're short. But I think transit was the guess. I think that one probably comes close to paying for itself. It's not cheap to ride the bus anymore. Isn't it like $3 now? Eek, $3.15 to ride the bus. Add a few more cents to gas costs and make it free. No, don't do that. Okay, anyway. All right, no, so I'm going to say no to that one. What else you got? What's that? There's one of the big ones. Police, right? The Winnipeg City Police is paid out of the Winnipeg property taxes. And, of course, smaller towns generally use the provincial RCMP, but it's still that town's responsibility to pay for the actual maintenance and running of the building and stuff. So, I mean, the actual Mounties get paid out of probably provincial tax dollars, but the actual day-to-day cost of running the department and keeping the building going and turning the lights on and all that, that's your property taxes. And of course, I think the magic number in Manitoba might be 25,000. I might be wrong about that. It's somewhere around there. If your town gets bigger than 25,000, you have to call it a city, and you can't use the RCMP anymore. So you got to start charging people's property taxes more so that you can pay for the Selkirk City Police. Right? Selkirk has their own police now. Brandon, for years and years. Right? Brandon's got like almost 100,000 people, so they got their own police. But everywhere that's smaller, it's RCMP, but still a lot of what they do gets paid for out of the property taxes. So police is a big one. What else you got? Yep, there's another one, yeah. Fire department. That comes out of municipal taxes. Okay, you've hit two of the big ones, but there's still a bunch to go. Hospital is provincial. So nope, your property taxes aren't that. That's your provincial sales tax and your income tax pays for those things. Yep. Yeah, there we go. Road maintenance, and I guess you could say construction, but maintenance, hello, fill the potholes, that kind of stuff. If anybody's wondering, why are the potholes here so bad? I mean, this is Winnipeg. We built a city on a swamp. Right? You go to some cities, you dig down 6 feet and you hit bedrock. There are some cities where people don't have basements because, who wants to blast through the bedrock? It's that close. But here in Winnipeg, there are spots where you could dig down 60, 70 feet and it's still mud. So you build a major city in the swamp and yeah, the roads are going to sink a bit. Not to mention it's minus 30 and then a month later it's plus 30. Yeah, the cement can only do so much. It's going to break. But that's the main reason why our roads are so rough. Route 90 is really bad. Grant's really bad. I take Grant home most days. There's some bad potholes on Grant. But anyway, yeah, all the money it costs to fill those things, once they finally get around to it, is from your municipal property tax. So road maintenance, and that of course includes building new roads, although we'll talk about that. That's actually more local improvement, but we'll talk about that. Road maintenance, and of course, while we're talking about roads, this one's going to come up tomorrow. Right, 25 centimeters we could get tomorrow. Yay. But we've been lucky, right? Somebody has to sit down and kind of try to predict how much snow we're going to get so that they can work out a budget. And boy, last year they probably predicted way too low because we had a huge bunch of snowfalls last year, right? This year was a lot less snow than last year. Well, we'll see what happens tomorrow. Even if we get 25 centimeters tomorrow, I think we're way under normal. It's been a dry year for winter, for snow. But when it does snow, they got to pay to clear it and put salt and sand down on the streets so we don't crash into each other and die. All that stuff comes out of, again, the municipal property tax budget. You're still missing a couple of big ones, though. I'll give you hints. Once a week, they got to pick this up. Garbage. Yeah, garbage. Yeah, somebody's got to keep all of the city properties nice and pretty and plant the flowers that you see along Portage Avenue and stuff. So we'll call that civic landscaping. Civic as in city, as in local. Of course, small towns have landscaping too. Boy, when you drive into places that have those little statues, let's see, Gladstone has a rock that's waving at you, and Gimli has the Viking. Selkirk has Charlie the Channel Cat. There you go. Right? There's always a little garden and stuff around them, and it looks real nice. You got to pay somebody to maintain that stuff. That comes out of property taxes. Okay, what else? You're still missing. Okay, you've got all the big ones. I can think of two fairly big ones though. Two smaller but still significant ones. What else do you get to use for free that somebody's got to pay for in your city? Healthcare again. That's provincial. Sidewalks, again, would be under your civic landscaping and your roads and stuff. Fix the sidewalks, fix the roads, all part of the same deal. How about this? There it is. Parks and Rec. Just like the TV show, right? So that would include your community centers, and that would include things like, actually that would include libraries too. I think libraries fall under Parks and Recreation's budget. Library, right? Those things. All those things cost money, right? The people that work there got to get paid, right? The stuff, the buildings on there that got to get fixed. People are like, hey, I use the recreation center to play hockey, and my kid pays $2,000 a year. It's like, well, yeah, but guess what? Even with how much it costs to play hockey, that doesn't come close to covering how much it actually costs to run hockey rinks. So yeah, property tax dollars pay the rest. just like, what, you think the library actually can run on your overdue fees? No, I don't think so. I think the property taxes is paying the rest. Yeah, you can. You can work your way out of them. You can work your way off of it. It's kind of like not paying the bill and you can do dishes. Oh, okay. All right. Now, how do they actually figure out how much you're paying for your property taxes? It's called a portioned assessment. It's like, hey, I've got a house that's worth $1 million. Are they going to tax me on $1 million worth of house? No. How come? Well, because maybe the market will crash tomorrow and then I suddenly have a $500,000 house. I know that's probably not very likely to happen, but it has happened, right? It happened in 2008. A lot of neighborhoods went, people couldn't afford their own mortgages anymore because their houses lost their value. But they still got to collect property taxes. The city's still got to run. So they've come up with a number that I think is probably about what most places do, 45%. See, when I say my house is worth X, who decides what that X number is, right? The bank is looking at, well, this is how much it's worth according to the market if I wanted to sell it right now. The insurance company is thinking, well, this is how much it is if I have to rebuild it from the ground up because it burned down. But for the property tax guys, it's here's how much we think that person owning that house should have to pay in taxes, and we've decided it's around 45% of the market value. So I should say 45% of market value. That way, it's a cushion. If the market does crash, it's only 45%. So they can still budget accordingly. So this is a very simple calculation math-wise, guys. We just multiply. So let's do an example of it right there, and then we'll come back. Example 1. A house has a market value of $78,000, and they've assessed the land that the building's sitting on at $8,000. In other words, even if you knock the building down, the land is still worth $8,000. That's very often how they do your property tax assessment. They'll assess the building and the land separately, and then you just add them together. So that's what we'll do first. We'll add them together. So there's my first step. I add them together, and when I do that, I get $86,000. And if the property is portioned at 45%, I would like 45% of that number. We've done that many times this year already. How do you find 45% of a number? Change the percent to a decimal and times. So that's a nice easy calculation. $38,700. So that's your taxable portion. That's what we call your taxable portion. Some problems give you this number already, so you don't have to do this calculation, which is kind of nice of them. You just have to be able to read when it says that, right? Kind of like earlier in the unit when it's like, oh, is this the mortgage amount or is this the price of the house? Because the mortgage amount is after you've taken the down payment off, right? The portioned assessment is after I've already done this multiply. So we'll kind of keep an eye out for that to make sure that doesn't burn us. And so that's how we figure out how much each individual home is paying. And somebody asked this morning, does that mean businesses are 45% too? No, actually, again, it's kind of different. Just like a farm wouldn't be 45%. Good thing. Think about how much property alone big farms are worth, right? So you wouldn't be able to afford 45% on that. So it's different for different things. But for homeowners, this is of course called home finance, this unit. For homeowners, it's generally the 45%. So that's our number. What's next? Well, now the city or the town or the municipality has to figure out how much tax to collect. So they literally go, okay, we're going to figure out a mill rate. Some of you have probably heard grown-ups talking about this, right? It's like, oh, I just moved into this different neighborhood. Oh, what's your mill rate out there? That's like saying, what rate are they taxing you on your property out there? And here's how the city figures out how to set it. They actually sit down and they make a budget. They go, how much money do we need to pay the fire department and the police and fix the roads and run the library and put a new plant for the ice rink at the community center and all the things they got to do. Make a budget. Then add up all of the portioned assessments, all the 45% on all the houses, all the whatever 20-something percent it is on all the businesses, and here's how much money we can raise. Divide those and times by 1,000. I asked people this morning, how many millimeters are in a meter? And I had people tell me it was 1 million. Mil, makes sense. No, it's 1,000, right? Millimeter is 1,000th of a meter. So the prefix mil means 1,000. So that's hopefully easy to remember if you knew that. This is another way of actually saying, for every $1,000 of house I own, this is how many dollars of property tax I got to pay. So here's a calculation for that. Go to example 2. A city has a taxable portioned assessment base of, ooh, that's a big number, 375 million, and the budget found that it has to raise 22,500,000 to run all the things it's got to run. So my mill rate is how much the city needs divided by how much the city can tax on times 1,000. And I'm very clumsy when it comes to punching buttons on a calculator, so I will try to simplify the calculation as much as I can. Notice that if there's 3 zeros up here and 3 zeros down there, you could just sort of cancel them. And then that 0 would cancel that 0, and then, okay, I can't cancel zeros anymore. So on my calculator, I would actually go 225 divided by 3,750, times that by 1,000, and I get 60. 60 what? $60? 60%? Nope. 60 mils. And that's kind of a shortcut way of saying, for me, how about this? For 45% of every $1,000 of house I own, I'm paying $60 a year in property taxes, if the mill rate's 60. Now here's the thing. The mill rate for the municipal and the mill rate for the education are never the same number. So you always have to calculate twice. That's what the next example is. Go to example 3. And you'll see, okay, so Andre and Denise Johnson own a home. And, oh, look, this is the portioned assessment. So what does that mean? It already is 45%. So I don't have to do the 45% thing. It's already built into that number. It is the portioned assessment. It's telling me that. See, it's telling me what to do. So the portioned assessment is $48,500. Ooh, the frontage of their home is 50 feet. I guess I kind of skipped over that part. We'll come back to this example. Go back just a couple seconds here. Local improvement tax. That's a little bit separate from the municipal tax and the education tax. You see, if I'm going to, say, fix the boulevard in this neighborhood, why should all the neighborhoods have to pay for that? So there's going to be one that's specific to a certain neighborhood, maybe even specific to a few streets. I am just old enough that when I grew up in the east side of town in Transcona, and when I think I was 7 or 8 when they filled in the ditches in front of my house and turned them into boulevards. Charleswood still has some neighborhoods like that, right? Charleswood still has some houses that are the streets right in the city, and they have a ditch in front of them instead of a boulevard. You know what I mean by a ditch, right? Like a dip where water collects, and metal tubes that connect called culverts to move the water out of them and stuff. Why did Charleswood never gonna switch to boulevards? I have no idea. But Transcona, we decided we wanted to be modern, and and it's a good thing, because literally the summer before they finally filled in the ditches, I drove a car into the ditch. Now I was 6, and I should mention it was an electric car. My dad worked for Winnipeg. My dad worked for Winnipeg Hydro, and he did a lot of work with when they expanded Polo Park Mall into a nice big mall. And the guy who ran the Sears there knew that he had a son, and I guess there's probably rules about giving gifts to government employees who help you do things, but they figured there's probably no conflict of interest in giving a gift to the guy's son. So the guy gave my dad to give to me an electric toy car. You've probably seen ones like it at Toys R Us. Nowadays they're like Jeeps and stuff. Well, this is the 70s. This was a Cadillac. So there's little 6-year-old me in my electric Cadillac, and yeah, it took me about 5 minutes. It went a lot faster than it's probably, I'm thinking as an adult now, but as a little kid, it was like, it felt really fast. It was probably like, but to a little kid, it was like I stepped on the pedal and went, ah! So sure enough, 5 minutes, ah! And I rolled too, and the thing was probably outweighed me, so I was lucky I wasn't hurt. So my mom was not impressed. Gave me a new toy, and I rolled it into the ditch. My dad had to climb into the ditch, into the water, and pull it out. So I used to think, my parents lied to me. They actually told me that's why they turned it into a boulevard. They didn't want you hurting yourself in that ditch. It's like, no, I'm pretty sure they had that planned already. Probably. Anyway, if you're in a neighborhood where they're going to turn the ditches into boulevards, that takes money. Dirt's not cheap. right? And you got to pay somebody to drive it there and dump it there and then put the sod on top, the grass. Should every neighborhood have to pay for that just because your street wanted to get rid of the ditches? Nope. So that's going to be local improvement. Now, how do we decide how much you pay locally? It depends on the frontage of your property. In other words, how wide is the front of your property? So there we go. Let's do a calculation. Andre and Denise Johnson own this much house, or 45% is the number for that. The frontage is 50 feet. Their annual municipal tax rate. So I'm going to do the municipal tax first. I'm going to take how much their house is worth. Again, for assessment, for portioned assessment purposes. Divide it by 1,000. And times it by the municipal tax mill rate. There it is. Okay, I've already punched these buttons. I think. Yep, I did. So I got $1,136.60. There we go. So that's how much the person who owns this house, or Andre and Denise Johnson who own this house, have to pay every year to the city they live in to run the fire department and the police department and the libraries and the community center and fix the roads and put flowers in front of Charlie the Channel Cat. Next, our education tax. Now, in some of the questions that you're going to see in your homework, I think education tax is broken into two separate taxes. There's a different mill rate for the provincial part and a different mill rate for the local school board part. For this question, it's all just one number. The mill rate is 30.926, so it's the same thing. How many thousands of dollars of house do I own? Times $30.926 per every thousand. And that, when I punch buttons, got me, what did I get for this one? $14.99.91. Remember, you always round money to cents, right? Okay, now read the rest of the problem. Their property includes local improvement taxes for boulevard construction. This is Transcona, they're filling in the ditches. And lane paving. Anybody still got a gravel back lane? No, there's still some neighborhoods in the city like that. Yeah, gravel front lane. Okay. Well, someday they might decide to pave it, in which case they're going to hit you with a local improvement tax. So, local improvement tax, LIT. That one you don't calculate. It doesn't depend on how much house you have. It depends on your frontage. 50 feet times. Now, you could do this calculation twice if you want. Once with this number and once with that number. But again, I've told you already, I'm very clumsy at punching buttons. The less buttons I got to punch, the better. So I'll just add those numbers together first. And how do you make sure the add happens before the multiply? You put it in a bracket. Yeah, exactly. And I've already calculated that number too. And it turns out it's $651. So this property tax bill for Andre and Denise is going to be that number, plus that number, plus that number. But, oh, there's one other thing I got to consider. What's the last sentence telling me? There is a homeowner's credit of $200. What do you think that means? Right. Somebody said minus 200. Right? So that means that they get $200 back. Now, they wouldn't say, okay, give us this much and we'll give you back 200. They'll just take 200 off the bill. Ever accidentally overpay one of your bills? I've done that lots. Accidentally wrote a check for too much. They give you a credit on your next bill. They don't send you back money. That's the easier way to do it. Less work for everyone involved. So this big number, add that big number, add that semi-big number, minus, yay, $200. Now, I had a hard time explaining to people, why would there be a homeowner's credit? Well, it's possible maybe last year's local improvement came in under budget, so they could give people some money back. Maybe there is it's a neighborhood that's been built by Qualico Homes or something, and Qualico Homes has made a deal with the local municipality saying, hey, we'll pay some of their property taxes to try to get people to buy these homes. That would come back as a $200 property tax credit. or more, whatever it was for the actual credit. Okay, so that happens all the time too. All right, add, subtract. If you do that, somebody could double check my numbers, make sure I didn't goof this up. $3,087.51. That would probably be about normal for this neighborhood for your standard 3 or 4 bedroom house. I have a 4-bedroom house in a neighborhood not quite as in demand as this one, so I think I'm paying around 28.7 I think was my last. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, 28.29 is my property tax bill. Now, how do you pay this? Do you have to write them a check once a year for that? You can. That's what my mom does. My mom does not do online banking. She's never touched a computer in her life. When my dad passed away a few years ago, I had to teach her how to use an ATM card and an ATM, a bank card. She had never done anything like that in her life. So when it's time to pay her bills, she goes down to the bank and writes a check. You can still do that. I know. Primitive, eh? But most of us pay our property taxes when we pay our mortgage. So if this was my property tax bill, you divide this, I'm on accelerated biweekly, so you divide this by, 26, right? 26 biweekly payments in a year. So you divide this number by 26 and then add that to my mortgage. And what's nice is the bank actually doesn't even I don't have to deal with the city. The money gets collected by my bank and sent to the city. It's all done without me having to deal with it. Probably costs me a couple bucks a year in interest for them to do that for me, but that's worth it because it's worth my time. I don't have time to go stand in the bank and write a check like my mom does. So it's worth it to me. Exactly. All right, so any questions? It looks like a complicated question, right? There's a lot of parts here, but once you understand the reading, it's just multiply and add, really. Oh, well, I guess there's a little bit of dividing. It's divide, multiply, and add. Oh, and 1 subtract. Basic arithmetic. This is doable. All right, let's do one more example, then I'll turn you loose. Actually, you want to try this one without me? I'll pause the video, give this one a try, and then we'll turn it back on. Okay, we're back. Let's work through this problem. So the first step is to add these two numbers together. Again, we were having a quick conversation here. Why would they assess land and building separate? Well, that would be to avoid people from doing one of two things. Either A, building a very expensive house in a not so expensive land-wise neighborhood, or the opposite, right? You buy a piece of land in a very expensive neighborhood and you put a little shack on it and you expect, hey, I'll pay almost nothing in property taxes. Nah, they assess those two things separately, so you're not going to get away with that. So that would give you 25,000 plus 82,000, which I believe is, or 82.5 is 108,400. Somebody double check that I did that number right. And now we have to calculate 3 things. First, let's do our municipal tax, which is 108,400 divided by 1,000 times, and okay, the municipal mill rate is 23.435. I punched that out and I got $2,540.35. Looks good. Now let's do our education tax. And again, you'll get some questions that'll have this as separate. There'll be a school division one and a provincial one. It works the same. So you have 3 calculations instead of 2. 108,400 divided by 1,000. And this time the mill rate is 18.326. And if you're wondering how do they set the mill rate for education, well, the same way they do it for the city. School divisions have to get together and make a budget, right? How many kids do we have? How many teachers do we have? How many buildings do we need to fix? All of that stuff. Do this calculation, you get 1986.54. Anybody agree with that number? Yep, okay. And then our frontage is 55 feet. So this is our local improvement tax. 55 feet, and okay, what are we paying for our local improvement tax? Well, this one's just 1. We're filling in the boulevard, so the crazy guy in Transcona doesn't drive his car into it anymore. $3.60, and that is 198 bucks. Add those 3 numbers together, and then minus 250, and you will get the property tax bill. I got $4,474.89. And for practice on this, before you do the hand-in that I'll hand out tomorrow, worksheet 2F in your workbook, right? That's 2E. There it is, 2F. So that's the assignments. All right, we'll stop the video.